Welcome to this deep dive. We're jumping straight into a recent live Q&A with Calogero Grifasi and Elena Martin from Team Grifasi.
Yeah, we've gone through it and picked out the questions and topics that, well, really stood out to us.
Things we thought would be, insightful or maybe just make you think a bit.
Exactly. It was quite a session, a real mix of questions from listeners.
It was. And if you caught the very start of that live stream, you might remember the plan was actually to talk about debanking.
Right, but that changed pretty quickly.
Yeah, Calogero explained that the questions they were getting initially weren't quite clicking.
Mm.
And debanking itself is maybe a bit complex, still quite new.
So it wasn't really sparking the kind of live discussion they wanted.
Exactly. So they opened it up, a much broader Q&A.
And that led to some really interesting places. Contracts, reality itself, the team's work, all sorts.
Okay, so let's dive in.
First up, there was a question from Valeria. She was asking about life contracts.
Like, who makes them? Is it us or is it other entities?
And Elena's answer was, well, really emphatic. She basically said individuals always have the final say.
It comes down to your own permission. Always.
But interestingly, she did talk about the tactics entities might use.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, being subtle, maybe taking advantage when someone's in a vulnerable spot, you know?
Right, so it's not always overt.
Not at all. But the core point, the thing Elena really stressed for you, the listener, is that your will, your permission, that's essential. Nothing happens without it, even if it's gained subtly.
Got it. Your permission is key. Okay, so moving on. There was a comment from Gaviota. It mentioned something like, mucho por desmentir tema Trump escrito gol.
Right, which roughly translates to needing to debunk things written about Trump, like scoring an own goal. It seemed to be about potential misinformation.
And Calogero jumped in on that.
Yeah, he talked about Trump's approach to trade balances.
Okay.
And he made a clear distinction, which is important for you to understand. Trade balance, what the U.S. buys versus what the other country buys, is totally different from tariffs or freisetless.
Which are taxes on imports.
Exactly. And Calogero explained how Trump allegedly used this. He apparently presented a formula.
A formula?
Yeah, that, according to Calogero, really inflated how much the U.S. seemed to be losing out, made the disadvantage look much bigger.
How much bigger?
Like 4 times bigger, Calogero claimed. So if someone was saying, say, a 40% loss...
The actual trade balance reality was maybe only 10%.
That's what Calogero was suggesting, yeah. A huge difference.
Wow. Okay, so that really shows how data can be framed, right?
Absolutely. And Calogero called this a kind of co-creation of a relative truth. If enough people buy into the skewed info,
it can actually start having real-world effects, even economic ones.
That was his point. He even called it a debanking of truth, which is quite a phrase.
It is. It makes you think about how easily information can be manipulated and what the knock-on effects are.
Definitely something for you to keep in mind.
Okay. Switching gears quite drastically now.
Yeah.
Leaves out a question about hypnosis.
Uh-huh. She wanted to know if she could hypnotize her son, who apparently doesn't believe in it.
Right. And what was the response there?
Elena made a really important distinction based on age, crucial for you listening. For minors, a parent can represent them.
Okay.
But even then, Team Grifasi prefers to get a video showing the child actually consenting, if possible.
And for adults?
Adults must give their own consent. No exceptions.
It's personal work. You can't force it on someone.
Exactly. Elena stressed that. It requires agreement, willingness.
And she mentioned something about the subconscious, too.
Yeah, that was fascinating. Basically, even if someone agrees consciously, if their subconscious mind isn't accepting it, the session just won't work effectively.
So that inner alignment is key.
It seems so. It has to resonate on a deeper level.
Interesting. Okay, next, Rocio made an observation. She talked about a shift in administration, but she meant
non-physical entities, yeah. This is where things got a bit more esoteric, which, might be particularly interesting for some of you listening.
How did Elena respond to that?
Well, she connected it to what we see happening globally, this move away from globalization towards more protectionism.
Okay.
And she suggested there could be a link between that shift and these non-physical entities acting through puppets here on Earth.
Puppets?
Yeah, she even mentioned Trump as a possible example, though she was careful not to take a political side, just illustrating the idea.
But the main point wasn't about which country is on top, right?
Exactly. Elena was very clear. These entities apparently don't care if it's the U.S., China, Russia, whoever. That's not their game.
So what is their interest, according to this view?
Movement. Imbalance. Chaos.
Chaos.
Yeah. Elena explained that this kind of disruption generates energy, especially those lower frequency energies.
And that's what they want.
That's the idea. They apparently draw on that energy to maintain their influence. She used that analogy of humans being like energy batteries.
So, from that perspective, global instability isn't just a side effect, it might actually be the goal.
That's what the perspective suggests, yeah. Definitely food for thought for you.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, Gloria had a question about contracts again. Could someone end them without knowing the exact details?
Right, and Elena really emphasized this concept of toma de conciencia, becoming aware.
Awareness of what, exactly?
Of what was given away or ceded, and, importantly, how the interference worked in the first place, the mechanism.
Oh, why is that so important?
To avoid repeating the pattern. If you don't understand how it happened, you might fall into it again without realizing.
So just wanting it to end isn't enough. You need that understanding for yourself.
That seems to be the key. Self-awareness is the first step to real change.
Did she say self-reflection could be enough on its own?
She acknowledged it might be for some people. They might figure it out just through introspection.
Right.
But if you're trying and not making progress, Elena suggested it probably means there's a key piece you haven't become aware of yet. Something still missing from your understanding.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, let's get into something a bit more out there, maybe. An anonymous question about Elon Musk.
Yes. Reportedly, Musk asked an AI, what's outside this simulation?
Playing on that whole reality is a simulation idea. What did the AI say?
Apparently it touched on the matrix, metaphysics, other simulations within simulations. Kind of the expected stuff, maybe?
It's a mind-bender of a question, for sure.
But Calogero brought it back down to earth a bit.
He did. He pointed out that the AI Musk likely interacted with was probably a basic free version, meaning it mostly just compiles information that's already floating around on the internet. It's not generating genuinely new insights necessarily.
Right. It's reflecting existing human ideas about simulations back at us.
Pretty much. And this actually led Calogero to a really interesting tangent.
Which was?
The idea of AI acting as a potential debunker of esoteric topics.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, he actually did a little experiment right there in the live session. He asked ChatGPT directly about Team Grifasi's hypnosis work.
Okay, wow. And what happened? This could be really revealing for you listening. It was fascinating. Calogero described the AI's response as diplomatic on the surface, but with some definitely critical undertones.
FO.
It acknowledged they're known for regressive hypnosis, especially the non-physical stuff, but then it listed reasons for doing it and things to consider.
And the things to consider were negative.
They leaned that way, yeah. The AI questioned their term disconnectors.
Which is what they call the entities they aim to remove.
Right. It also used phrases like se suppone, it's assumed, when talking about client control during sessions. And it stated very clearly, no hay evidencia científica sólidas. No solid scientific evidence.
Because it's esoteric, not mainstream science.
Exactly. The AI even labeled it Hypnosis Esoterica, setting it apart from hypnoterapia traditional, which, subtly positions it outside the accepted norm.
Did it say anything else critical?
Oh, yeah. It warned that sessions could remove cosas intensas, stir up intense things.
Which Elena also acknowledged can happen when underlying issues surface.
True, but the AI framed it as a warning, advising against it without professional accompaniment, kind of implying the team might not fit that traditional mold.
Subtle digs.
Seemed like it. It even made a slightly sarcastic comment about muchos falsos grifasi. Lots of fakes out there.
Highlighting the imitation problem.
And it suggested the work was maybe only interesting as an experiment, sort of downplaying its seriousness. It even asked why someone would consider a session very probing.
Wow. That's quite the assessment from an AI. So what happened when Calogero pushed further?
He asked it directly. Me han dicho que son unos estafadores. I've been told they're scammers.
Bold move. What did the AI say to that?
It basically acknowledged the split opinions. Some see them as despiertos, awakened, others as charlatans or estafadores, charlatans or scammers.
So it reflected the controversy. Did it give reasons for the negative view?
Yes. Again, the lack of scientific backing. The extreme topics, reptilians, implants,
Stuff that challenges conventional reality.
Exactly. Also, the cost. It mentioned sessions are seen as costosas, costly, leading to accusations they exploit vulnerable people.
And Calogero had a counter to that during the live.
He did. He basically asks, what's costly if it helps someone resolve huge, long-standing issues? It raises that question of value for you. What's the price of potential transformation?
A fair point about subjective value. What else did the AI mention?
Ambigüedad en los resultados. Ambiguity in results. The idea that it might just be suggestion or placebo.
Which Elena addressed by talking about personal processes and, well, the power of the placebo effect itself, even if science doesn't fully get it.
Right, and the AI also mentioned reports of people feeling worse afterwards.
Which Elena explained as possibly bringing underlying stuff to the surface, not the session making things worse per se.
Correct. So the AI's conclusion was pretty cautious. It said their work is no es para todos, not for everyone.
Okay.
It warned about fakes just trying to make money using the name. It advised people to research operators, listen to real sessions, trust their gut.
Standard due diligence, really.
Yeah, and only do it if it resonates, and crucially, if you can afford it.
So overall, was the AI response seen as negative or constructive?
Calogero seemed to be weighing that up himself, and apparently some listeners in the chat felt the AI's response made the session sound potentially dangerous.
Interesting. It really shows that tension, doesn't it, between the conventional view and these more esoteric approaches. A lot for you to think about regarding AI's role in shaping perceptions.
Absolutely. Which brings us to some actual updates from the team.
Oh, yeah. What's new?
They announced a new YouTube channel. It's called the Academy channel, focused specifically on training.
Okay, so more resources for people wanting to learn their methods.
Looks like it. They shared the link, mentioned training videos coming, a whole training department being set up.
And something else about investigations and the academy.
Yeah, they hinted at new developments connecting their investigation department and this new academy. There was a meeting planned to figure out implementation.
So potentially some significant changes coming in how they operate and share information, something for you followers to watch.
Definitely. Now, they also covered a bunch of other listener questions in the rest of the Q&A. Quickfire round.
Let's do it. Time between sessions.
Elena recommended at least 6 months for metabolization, but depends on the person.
Breaking contracts with intention alone.
Elena said intention is the absolute key. Hypnosis is just an accelerator.
Metabolizing interference cancel at different times. Does it vary?
Elena said no, metabolization rate is the same. Intention is what matters.
Magnesium supplements making you more vulnerable to entities? Someone had weird dreams.
Elena said body chemistry can affect perception, sure, but vulnerability is about will and consciousness, not just being open from supplements.
Why do some people see past lives in hypnosis, others see deeper stuff?
Depends on the root of the issue and the person's process. Everyone goes to the relevant origin for them.
Did Elena confirm more AI interference in her sessions recently?
Yes, she did say she's observed an increase. Ties back to the AI discussion, maybe.
And former team members leaving. Was it because of the scammer stuff?
No, apparently they had prior commitments, not related to the accusation.
Calogero using pendulums.
Never used one, he said.
How many investigations confirm something is true for them?
Elena said it varies. Depends on the telepathic supports filters and how consistently the info comes up across different sessions. It's nuanced.
Got it. Any positive feedback mentioned?
Yeah, one listener said the Q&A made them trust the team more.
Good to hear both sides. Booking info shared.
Yep, Elena's email, links to the Spanish website, the operator course.
What about that special course for first-degree operators?
On hold currently. Testing in other languages. Might come back later.
Calogero's preference in hypnosis.
Exploring beyond the physical, generally. Though past life stuff is valid too.
Comment about public figures getting criticism.
Calogero kept it brief, neutral, didn't really engage much.
Elena's advice on handling the flood of AI info, the Grego Massivo.
Basically, it's a tool. Don't give it too much power. Your own strength and discernment are paramount.
And her take on tools like pendulums.
They're instruments. Power comes from the user's belief and intention. But the team prefers not to rely on intermediaries.
Okay, quite a range there.
Definitely covered a lot of ground.
So wrapping up this deep dive into that Team Grifasi Q&A. Wow, we've touched on so much.
Yeah, from the power of your own will and contracts to navigating misinformation.
Which seems more relevant than ever.
Totally. Then the whole complex idea of non-physical influences, how they might connect to global events.
And even getting an AI's perspective on esoteric work, which was, well, eye-opening in its own way.
We really hope digging into all this has given you, our listeners, some interesting things to chew on, some new perspectives maybe.
And building on that AI discussion, here's a final thought for you to mull over. As AI gets woven deeper into our daily lives, how is that going to change how we think about truth, about belief, maybe even about reality itself?
Especially when dealing with these non-physical concepts that, standard science just doesn't have tools to validate easily. Where does AI fit into that conversation?
It's a big question. We definitely encourage you to reflect on these ideas. Maybe check out the original session if something really grabbed you.
Yeah, explore further if you feel drawn to it.
And definitely join us next time. We've got another deep dive planned, looking into a really interesting new development the team is working on implementing. Sounds quite intriguing.
Yeah, looking forward to unpacking that one.
So until then, thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.